morning, y'all. Josh with Severe Weather. Happy Friday to you. Hope you guys have had a wonderful week. I'm a meteorologist in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, and I've been doing this for about 20 years or so on YouTube since December. And I'm going to be talking about our next potential impactful tropical cyclone, which I believe will be affecting Florida and the Southeast here next week. The next name on the list is Idalia. And we don't have an official track yet. Models have not been run on this, but models are starting to come into more agreement today. So I'm going to go ahead and put out my very first forecast for potential cyclone Idalia. And we are looking at development somewhere here near the Yucatan or the southeastern Gulf towards the first part of next week, Monday into Monday night, early Tuesday. I am predicting that this will become a tropical storm over the eastern Gulf Tuesday and Tuesday night and very quickly move into Florida, potentially as a low-end hurricane here by the middle of next week. Beyond that, it will have better support for the storm to continue to ventilate, but it will be over land, so will likely weaken back to tropical storm strength and then accelerate and move away to the east-northeast before the holiday weekend, before Friday. So we are looking at potential landfall sometime between Tuesday night and Wednesday afternoon, moving off the coast and clipping the Carolinas here during the Wednesday night, Thursday night time frame of next week. So less than a week now to prepare for potentially a stronger tropical storm or a hurricane. I don't know about major hurricane. I know people in Florida are obviously very gun shy on rapidly developing cyclones, and this is certainly something that could do that, but excuse me, I'm not seeing it just yet. If that does happen, and I really hope it doesn't, you'll of course hear it from me first as we do daily videos here. But here is a look right now at the United States, and we'll get back to the tropics in a little bit. And we've had some busy weather across parts of the northern and eastern United States. Let me show you kind of where all the action is right now. We've got a dying mesoscale convective system, MCS, moving through the Ohio Valley into northwestern Virginia and Maryland. And this could re-strengthen some, or at least bring some heavier storms as we get into the afternoon hours across southern Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and North Carolina. But I don't think it's going to be as strong as how it was here yesterday evening over Michigan, Ohio, and northwestern Pennsylvania. We had some really rough weather across this region. Now, we do have another system to keep an eye on that's going to track across the lower lakes today. I don't think it's going to be as strong. And then, interestingly, the remains of Harold, which made landfall here 2 days ago in Texas, have come all the way up here into western Colorado and Wyoming. And we could see very significant amounts of rain in the Denver area today, perhaps some flash flooding there. That moisture is going to come up and over this ridge of high pressure, right over the periphery of it here into the weekend. So wet weather expected across this part of the country here right through the weekend. And then we're going to have some tropical trouble to talk about. We do have some energy that's coming down here and actually moving southwest. This is the trough splitting. So we've got a pretty big trough over the east, a piece of that coming into the Gulf of Mexico, and that is what it's going to draw moisture northward into the Gulf from the Caribbean early next week. As this upper level low continues down in here, it's going to entice our moisture over Central America northward into an area that will become more favorable for tropical development down in here. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. The western U.S. quiet for now. We do have a pretty strong trough off the west coast. That's going to send wet weather up to the Pac Northwest over the next few days as we get a taste of early fall here. But unfortunately, not a lot of relief today from this heat wave that we're in. In fact, I think we had an all-time record high tide yesterday in Houston, Texas. Yes, we did. It was 109 degrees at IAH, Bush Intercontinental. Chicagoland, 100 degrees at both O'Hare and Midway. I'm from Louisiana. Baton Rouge was 106. It was never that hot when I lived there. New Orleans was up to 100 again. So it's been pretty extreme here over the Gulf states. We've got a flash drought in place, but fortunately, as this moisture comes northward, I do think we see some of that heat breaking. It'll still be hot. Here's where the severe weather reports were last night, starting off in southern and southeast Wisconsin and western Michigan, and then later in the evening over southeast Michigan around the Erie shoreline. Cleveland had wind gusts to 75 miles per hour overnight. I really hope that you guys are okay there in northeast Ohio. Cleveland got rocked. And then western PA and West Virginia had some rough weather as well later in the night. We also had some locally severe weather coming out of that upper low that's tracking southwest over parts of the western Piedmont of North Carolina and the upstate of South Carolina and northeastern parts of Georgia, right in the foothills here, Coney and Pickens County. You can see where our boundary is going to be today. Marginal risk for severe weather from eastern Colorado straight through the Ohio River Valley into the mid-Atlantic region, getting as far south as the Triad of North Carolina. We'll see that gradually shift some southward. And now let's take a look at the tropics for the rest of this video. So here is where we are right now. The Hurricane Center predicting a 70% chance of formation through 7 days. Over today, tomorrow, and early on Sunday, just a 20% chance, but after Sunday morning, likely that we're going to see development somewhere in this area or into the eastern Gulf. And all signs point towards the Big Bend or the Gulf Coast of Florida as the potential track. Tropical Storm Franklin likely to be our next hurricane, our second one of the year. It's still got some wind shear to deal with for the next 2 days. Once that relaxes, it does have a good chance of intensifying into a hurricane. In the central Atlantic, no major concerns. The remains of Emily are actually fading, and I don't think we're going to see redevelopment at this point. The next system is going to be turning northwestward and for the time being not developing, but after Franklin moves away, we could see some development here into our next system, which would be Jose. I hope I said that right, Jose. I like that name actually, because I'm Josh, so Jose is only a letter different. So here's a wide view of the tropics. You can see here is Franklin right here getting some wind shear in from the west. I'll zoom in on that. Here is the next potential system, 92L, not looking super healthy. Here's the remains of Emily up here, moving away to the north-northeast. Here's the remains of Gert, which is actually moving southwest towards Barbados, Trinidad, Tobago, and the Windward Islands, but not expected to develop. Here's our big upper level low. We've got this monsoon trough right around it. This is the area we've got to watch after this low moves away. And then this low up here dives southwestward. What it's going to do is create a path for this system here, this monsoon trough, to come up through the Yucatan. And then once it clears the Yucatan in the southeast Gulf, it could be all systems go later Monday night into Tuesday morning. And the general track takes it towards Florida after that. I've been talking about Florida for a few days. I'm going to stick to my guns on this, but until the system does actually form, there is still some level of uncertainty on this time frame. I just want you all to know that even though all the models show it happening now, there's still uncertainty, as you guys can imagine. But unfortunately, anything that forms down here can strengthen quickly due to the warm waters. And we have often seen storms quickly intensifying in the 1 to 2 days before landfall. So if you're in Florida, now's the time to prepare and pray that this is not going to be a major deal and just maybe a tropical storm, because I don't want you all to be caught off guard. In the Pacific, on the southern side of this monsoon trough, we could see a couple of systems developing, one here and one here. This one here could be an issue for the Riviera, but I don't think it's going to hit California like the last one. This one is way out to sea, and then behind it, we should be quieter in the coming days. All right, so let's take a look at the rest of the world here. And this is 92L, this is Tropical Storm Franklin, and then our two areas to watch in the Pacific. And then I'm going to talk about the Western Pacific real quick towards the end of the video. We do have Tropical Storm Domre, I think it is, which will probably be a typhoon here in the next couple of days. It is fortunately going to be recurving east of Japan. We do have another system west of Guam that could gradually develop, but unfortunately a bigger system northeast of the Philippines is projected to get pushed southward and make a counterclockwise loop and strengthen into a very strong typhoon. And unfortunately, this could be very bad for Taiwan next week. We're looking at next Wednesday as the potential strike time frame as a violent typhoon. So if you're in Taiwan or if you have family out that way, you very much need to be concerned about this potential track. I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video. In the Gulf, water temperatures still remain above average. Basically, everybody in the near waters here is above average. And we are to the point where we're in the peak of the hurricane season over the next 4 weeks when the waters are at their warmest. So being above that average obviously favors any storm that has the ability to grow quickly. And that is certainly a concern that I have. There's the Pacific side of things. Here's a look at the ensembles on the European, and you will see very clearly this is being modeled as a potential tropical cyclone here, Idalia, and all the models are now taking it towards Florida, with the time frame being next Tuesday and Wednesday. This is Franklin, not a threat to the East Coast, but it will kick up the surf quite a bit here starting this weekend. It may come close to Nova Scotia, more of a problem though for Newfoundland here later next week. The remains of GERT not expected to develop. There's some very weak low pressure here. 92L could develop after Franklin leaves later next week towards Wednesday and Thursday. Emily not going to reform, it doesn't look like. And then we've got another wave coming off of Africa next Wednesday. And I'm going to move that forward for you guys to see. And you can see this one could start to develop here in the Eastern Atlantic. There's some that take it west towards the islands, others starting to recurve it following 92L, which again could develop, but it's going to be hampered by the outflow from Franklin, which is likely to come up and hit Newfoundland here later next week, Thursday night into Friday. Here's what I think will be Idalia, and that is going to track near the Carolina coast and then out to sea. Obviously, a lot more uncertainty when we get beyond 7 to 8 days, but I will talk about that potential. Here's the potential to see a tropical storm over the next few days. We have Franklin, that will be a hurricane. Here's our next threat in the Eastern Gulf heading into Tuesday night, Wednesday, and Wednesday night. A possibility that it hits northern and central Florida here, maybe even the Gulf or the Panhandle. And then here's 92L, which could be Jose towards the second half of next week. And then the next system behind it, again, now we're starting to get too far out, but we could be up to the K-storm by Labor Day weekend. Here's a look at the Caribbean Sea, or some of you call it the Caribbean. I'm not sure which is correct. I say Caribbean. Here's our upper level low in the Western Gulf. That is going to move away to the west. And after it does so, we will see a more favorable environment for thunderstorms to start gathering here in the Northwest Caribbean. It's not really happening yet, and it may not for the next 48 hours. But as we get on into Sunday, this is the area I'm going to be watching, how it interacts with land and what path it takes eventually. But still a lot of wind shear out of the southwest and west coming out of this upper low. That is preventing this from organizing now. And this is why I don't think we're going to have a major hurricane, just too much wind shear for a few more days. The Caribbean's pretty quiet. We have a lot of dry air in place here. That is going to kill off what's the remains of GERT. And then Franklin getting some of that westerly shear coming out of this upper level trough. And that is blowing off the thunderstorms to the east of the center for the time being. That shear is expected to relax once we get into the weekend. And that's when it looks like Franklin will intensify into a hurricane. You can see that wind shear very clearly here on the infrared. See these higher clouds here north of Haiti? Let me get my pen out for you guys here again. These higher clouds here indicate that westerly wind shear. And so the center of the storm somewhere in here, but all the thunderstorms are getting blown off to the east. It's still a strong system, 60-mile-per-hour winds, but a lot of wind shear for the time being is going to keep it from strengthening. Here's a look at that potential path, and it's going to continue moving east, being pushed by that trough until we get to Saturday afternoon. Then the trough leaves and high pressure rebuilds here and pushes the system back to the northwest. And right now, Bermuda is to the east of the cone of uncertainty, which is good news for Bermuda. It's not saying that we're going to avoid rain or wind in Bermuda, but the likeliest chance for hurricane conditions stay to the west of Bermuda Monday night into Tuesday. And then that looks like it's going to turn away from the East Coast. Nova Scotia, keep an eye on it for Wednesday night and Thursday. More than likely, that path, though, goes towards Newfoundland. Here's where tropical storm winds have occurred, right over the center of the Dominican Republic, just clipping the Turks and Caicos. And you can see that right turn here in the last 24 hours. Now, over the next couple of days, we could still see tropical storm conditions on Bermuda, but the higher chance stays to your west. For Cape Cod and eastern Maine, there is a slight chance as this storm grows that we could see tropical storm force wind, but I don't think we're looking at 50 knot or 58 mile per hour winds, at least for New England. Maybe though for Nova Scotia. And then hurricane probabilities look to be highest well offshore and staying just west of Bermuda. So in all intents and purposes, this is going to be not a fish storm, but a storm that manages to avoid most major land masses until it starts weakening and gets up into Atlantic Canada later next week. Here you can see our models are pretty well in agreement. We still have an eastward moving storm for 24 hours, and then tomorrow we have a turn back to the northwest and then curving west of Bermuda here on Monday night, Tuesday. Wednesday, we're up in here. Thursday, we are coming closer to Newfoundland, and then Thursday night accelerating quickly across eastern and southeastern Newfoundland. We may see some pretty good intensification, category 1, 2, or possibly even 3 here heading into Monday, and then weakening after it passes Bermuda back towards a category 1 storm. We may still, though, have a strong tropical storm or even a hurricane affecting Newfoundland here by next Thursday. Here's a look at the tropical HAFS model. You can see storm strength starts picking up here on Saturday with 992 millibar pressures, then a turn back to the northwest directly between Bermuda and the Bahamas as a hurricane on Sunday morning. Strengthening hurricane into the 950s, which would probably be a Category 3 hurricane by Monday. Maybe a high-end Category 3 or even a low-end Category 4 if this model is right. But it's going to be well between the Outer Banks and Bermuda when it happens Monday night. Weakening should start into Tuesday morning, and then Wednesday we'll probably have a Category 2 hurricane, weakening to a Category 1 hurricane, and that will eventually come by to the south and east of Nova Scotia Wednesday night and Thursday. Here's a look at that HAFS, and let me make this a bit smaller so everyone can see our maximum winds here. Not very impressive right now, only about 50 miles per hour on the models, but starting to pick up here as we get towards the weekend. This time frame is late tonight, and we're seeing wind speeds of about 65 miles per hour, closer to hurricane strength. It's going to take a little bit longer, though, before it can become a hurricane. The HAFS says that will happen on Sunday morning, right around 8 o'clock Eastern time. This is the Bahamas, Bermuda is still off the map here. And then strengthening pretty steadily here to a Category 2 hurricane Sunday night. Category 3 hurricane, though, by Monday afternoon, 125 mile per hour winds or so. And then as we get to the nighttime hours, potentially getting close to Category 4 strength. We're very close at 129 miles per hour Monday afternoon, then some weakening beyond that. Fortunately, Bermuda here is just off of our map. You can see that right here. This is Bermuda here, and the center is at least 300 miles away, passing by to the west. It's going to come right through here. So we may still have tropical storm conditions in Bermuda Monday night, early Tuesday, but right now looking like we're going to avoid a major hit at this point. Then the storm should begin to weaken over cooler waters on Tuesday night, still though a Category 1 hurricane, and then probably weakening by the time it gets up towards Newfoundland. Here's a look at our potential wind gusts for Atlantic Canada. It's going to be windy in Nova Scotia with a front moving through on Saturday, but that's not the storm. As the storm does come by west of Bermuda right here, we could see wind gusts of 42, so basically about 42 to 46 miles per hour here Monday night. So tropical storm conditions possible, but not hurricane conditions expected. Now, for Nova Scotia itself on Wednesday, the strongest winds look like they're going to stay right offshore and then move up towards Newfoundland here Wednesday night, where we could be dealing with wind gusts in excess of 50 miles per hour. I will show you that here, and we'll switch to kilometers per hour. And we can see a little bit breezy here in Newfoundland here Monday and Tuesday. But as we get towards Wednesday night, this is at about 3 in the morning here Atlantic Standard Time, or 2 in the morning. On Thursday, we do see winds picking up very quickly over Cape Race here and the Avalon Peninsula with gusts over 110 kilometers per hour possible. And that's going to come very quickly here during the nighttime hours and then leave after that. So we do have that potential to see wind gusts over 110 kilometers per hour, which can knock out the power here. And that would be later Wednesday night, early on Thursday. All right, looking at the rest of the central Atlantic, you see Franklin here, the remains of Gert. Here's 92L, and then we start to see some monsoon activity farther off to the east, but nothing that looks like urgently it will develop. We really have to wait probably another week to see any kind of invest coming off of Africa at this point. Here's a look at the 92L feature, and you still see that strong westerly wind shear coming up and over it. So it doesn't look like it's going to form into a tropical depression, at least in the next 2 to 3 days, maybe later in the weekend or next week. And you can see that intensity forecast is very marginal right on through about Tuesday. And then maybe after Franklin leaves the area, it has a better chance to develop, but it's going to be probably closer to a week. Here's the Gulf of Mexico again. Here's our upper level low moving west over the southwestern Gulf. That's creating all the wind shear here. After that moves away, though, we are going to see some development likely here in the Northwest Caribbean as we get to about Sunday into early Monday. The European model has been pretty steady with this system developing once it leaves the Yucatan here on Monday. It looks like that would happen probably Monday night. Here's Florida, so we're still not dealing with a ton of moisture, but it will be wet across South Florida later Monday night. As we head into Tuesday, we are going to see steady development here, probably a tropical storm if the European is right. And then as we get to Wednesday morning, as it comes in closer to Florida, I think this is the chance for it to intensify pretty steadily, and I'll talk about why in just a little bit. The European says it's going to be a stronger tropical storm. The pressure will continue to lower as it crosses the peninsula very quickly Wednesday afternoon and night, and continue to deepen as it passes east of the Carolinas Wednesday night, Thursday morning. So this system could be just as healthy, if not healthier, after it leaves Florida and goes into the Western Atlantic and comes north of Bermuda. The end game on this is pretty interesting as well, but again, that's awfully far off. By the way, the European shows Hurricane Jose here after Hurricane Idalia, or at least Tropical Storm Idalia. The model run before on the European was very similar, so we're seeing some run-to-run agreement, which I like. But here's some interesting stuff going on here. Over the Gulf Stream, we have a slowing down here of the forward motion. Dry air is in place over the Carolinas, so I think we're in good shape in the Carolinas here. Labor Day weekend actually should be pretty nice, but interestingly, the older European model took the storm system and kind of stalled it out here and has a little bit of interaction with the next system, almost as if it has some high pressure building here over the northern Atlantic. And this slowing down here and this little loop down here needs to be watched. It's 10 days away, so it is definitely not a forecast that I would you know, blunt my sword on, but or whatever it is, bet on. But this, if this system out here develops, we may have something that is still to be watched on the East Coast here on Labor Day weekend. So stay tuned on that one. European ensembles are pretty much in agreement here. A turn to the northwest heading into Sunday night, then recurving and turning northward and northeastward here. This is Tuesday afternoon, so a lot of them showing at least a tropical storm here Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday night. A couple of models showing a hurricane here west of Tampa, the others tropical storm strength. We'll take a look at that, and then crossing the Florida Peninsula or moving into the Eastern Panhandle here Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night, and then turning away and moving away Thursday into Friday. It's less likely it's going to be South Florida. I think it'll be Central Florida, but possibly the Eastern Panhandle. I don't think Louisiana is going to be under the gun here. We need that rain in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, but I think this is going to be a Florida storm. I've been saying that for a few days. I'm going to stick to my guns on it. The Canadian model has been the one that's kind of led the charge here with more of a western track towards Apalachicola and the Big Bend. It is showing a higher end tropical storm at this point. I think that's reasonable. I think it could be a Cat 1 hurricane. It is turning it away to the northeast, actually has near hurricane strength moving through places like Emerald Isle here next Wednesday night. So it's actually faster than the European by about 12 hours. It leaves some moisture behind, and we have to keep an eye on the Gulf of Mexico on Labor Day weekend. Right now, very dry air in place over the eastern U.S. and over Texas, but the western Gulf needs to be watched. It's still too far to make any kind of projections, though. The GFS model, here's some interesting development, now shows a circulation center here Tuesday morning. The GFS did not have this developing. Now it is starting to show that it will develop. So that's allowed me to feel a little bit more confident today that we'll have a tropical system. It's still behind the curve here on the other systems, or on this system, than the other models. It's showing a low-end tropical storm coming in north of Tampa Bay here on late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. I think this will continue to trend towards the European and the Canadian. The GFS just has not been doing great this season, so I'm not putting a lot of stock in it. But now that I see it starting to agree more with the Canadian and the European and the Icon model, that makes me feel a little bit better. It's got the system moving away and making a hard right into the Western Atlantic here Thursday night into Friday. And notice how it takes that moisture and tries to bring it back. So it's stalling as well here on Labor Day weekend. Very much that is something we need to keep an eye on, but it's still 10 days away at this point. Let's look at the upper level pattern from the European. This is why I think we could have a hurricane. I'm going to show you all this here, and let me make this a bit smaller so that you guys can see. So over the weekend, we do have some pretty strong wind shear out of the west and the northwest aloft. Now, as we get on into the second part of the weekend, we see the upper level lows splitting into the northeastern Gulf. See this circulation here? That's the upper low splitting. As it does so, it is going to move itself into the northeastern Gulf and park itself here Monday. That is going to keep our system from developing because there's just going to be too much wind shear out of the west and southwest around the base of this trough. But after that trough moves away Monday night, you'll see wind shear weakens very quickly with a lighter westerly wind aloft. And then we see more favorable conditions for development here. The wind shear has moved away to the north, but our system is getting lifted northeastward by a trough. So with lower wind shear, we could see some pretty quick intensification in the northeastern Gulf. The only thing keeping this from becoming a big storm is the fact that it just isn't going to have enough time over water. But I think with that wind shear, if it continues to be modeled this low, we certainly could see a Category 1 storm coming into the Gulf Coast north of Tampa Bay. So we have to keep an eye on that. And then as this trough lifts out, we actually see intensification due to what's called a baroclinic process, not a barotropic. That means jet stream energy is going to make the system stronger, basically. That's a simple layman's term on that. So very interesting setup here. The European model does show tropical storm winds likely to move in here later Tuesday night to the Florida Keys and especially the Gulf Coast of Florida, and potentially wind gusts over 50 to 60 miles per hour near Tampa Bay. So Tampa, we kind of missed out on Ian last year, but maybe this is going to be your storm. So we have to keep an eye on that here for Wednesday. And then strong winds off the coast of Florida. You can see wind gusts may get over hurricane force over the Gulf Stream here Wednesday night into Thursday. Fortunately, staying away from the Carolinas for the most part. But even if you look at North Carolina here and you're in Cape Fear or Southport, we could potentially on the backside of the storm see strong winds pushing everything away from the coast. And we may see wind gusts that get over 50 miles per hour in the Outer Banks on Thursday, if the Euro is right. Rain totals could be pretty significant. Here's our front dropping down here over Sunday. We finally get some storms in parts of northern Louisiana, Dallas. I mean, it's been 110 every day. We could use this. Arkansas starts cooling down finally, and significant amounts of rain here across the Carolinas here over Sunday and Monday. Here's the moisture coming up from Florida here. We could see some rain in South Florida here on Monday and especially Monday night. Then you can see heavy amounts here on Wednesday around Tampa Bay and around the Big Bend, with some potential to see over 6 inches of rain in 24 hours. So we quickly go from extreme dryness to what could be flash flooding here over parts of west central and northern Florida here Tuesday night, Wednesday into Wednesday night. Maybe some heavy rain coming up the East Coast into the Carolinas as well. But fortunately, that's going to leave in time for the holiday weekend. We do still have a ribbon of moisture, though, across Florida, so you're going to get some more needed rain in Florida here Friday into Saturday, but maybe drying out in time for Labor Day if this model is correct. Looking farther out here, we can see this is the European operational here. This is where our system goes and it starts stalling. This is the next one, Jose. Here's a look farther east on the European. You can see Franklin here passing west of Bermuda. This will be our next system here, probably developing on Wednesday after Franklin leaves. Wind shear does weaken and allow some development Wednesday and Thursday. And this model showing Jose. This could be Idalia. These two could interact a bit. And then here's our next system, not really potentially developing at all, based on the fact that we just have too many players on the field in the way here to set up that that are blocking things from developing. Here's a Canadian model, which doesn't always do as well as the European, but you can see it tries to develop Jose here late next week after Franklin leaves, and that is probably going to recurve away. And then it does develop the next wave coming off Labor Day weekend. The GFS model, one that has been struggling mightily. Maybe it's correct, who knows? But it's got a strong hurricane Franklin here. It's got a weaker Jose later next week. Doesn't really develop Jose. In fact, this one could be Jose coming past the Cape Verdes here on Labor Day weekend. And we'll keep an eye on that one. We'll also keep an eye on the one after it. Both of these, though, look like they're going to be recurving over the central Atlantic, at least for the time being. And then here's our Pacific typhoon that we definitely have to watch out for. 75 mile per hour wind. The name of the typhoon is Cyola, I believe, and pressure down to 981 millibars. And you can see on the infrared, it's got that look to it. This is Luzon in the Philippines. This area got hit very hard earlier this summer, if you didn't forget. Here's Taiwan up here, which is getting very heavy rain drifting south. And we see on the European that this storm is going to make a counterclockwise loop east of the Philippines. And then later in the weekend, develop very quickly into a powerful typhoon with pressures down to 940 millibars Monday night and Tuesday, and maybe into the 930s, maybe a Category 4 or even Category 5 typhoon aimed at Taiwan here on Wednesday of next week. We'll see how strong it gets, but it will weaken by the time it moves inland here Wednesday night and Thursday, and then the remains head into China as a tropical storm at the end of the week. So very rough Western Pacific season. I think this could be one of the biggest ones yet. The European is showing that potential for wind gusts over 130 knots, which is about 155 miles per hour. And even additional strengthening here and wind gusts off of Taiwan as high as 180 miles per hour Wednesday night, Thursday morning. So this could really hit Taiwan hard. But again, this forecast is 6 to 7 days out and things could still change. So that's a lot to talk about, but I hope you all have a wonderful day. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do have a membership channel as well. I'll be responding to those folks first. And as a Christian man, I give all the glory to God every day who allows me to do what I do. This is my calling as a meteorologist, but I've also been called to share the gospel. That is the good news that Jesus is coming again and that we can live eternally with our God in heaven. Colossians 3:1 says, "If ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. For ye are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, shall appear, then ye shall also appear with him in glory." All the glory goes to God because we are dead to sin when we accept Jesus Christ as our Savior. And when we make that commitment, we can now sit with God in heaven when our time on earth is gone. It's not a very long life we're given. For most of us, it's 60 to 80, maybe 90 years. That's really not a long amount of time, but you can make a difference on the earth. In the end, though, if we set our affection on the things above and not on things on the earth, God's got our back, and Jesus Christ will be with us. He's coming one day. He's going to appear in his full glory, and we have that gift that we can accept to live with Jesus Christ eternally. I hope that's your situation. I will pray for you either way. If you have any prayer requests, happy to pray for you, and I hope you all have a blessed Friday. We'll catch you again in the morning. God bless.